Welcome to Charts Today. It is Tuesday, the 19th of May, and we have another taco trade where basically Middle East action was threatened and then called off. And we are seeing, as a result, crude oil falling back. If we look at the 60-minute chart, there's Brent crude. We can see we're now waiting to see which target gets activated. If we go higher, that target turns green. If we go lower, that target turns red. Classic traffic light system. We're just waiting to see. This is the classic thing of we're now in a range. Do we break higher and go higher? Do we break lower and go lower? It's that simple. And those that are trading energy will be watching the 1 minute targets. And we're seeing gas prices still looking strong. So it's affected crude oil a little bit, but not really changing things dramatically. If we look at the dollar chart, we are just waiting to see when this breaks. That's going to be really quite key. Another one that's really interesting is the Japanese yen. This was intervention. The market is now selling the yen further, remembering that the dollar buys more yen, which is why this chart is going up. There's a falling yen, rising dollar against the yen. And now we are almost certainly that 160 level is a level where the Bank of Japan will get worried and step back into the market. And of course, if we look at the bond yields for Japan, that is still a big worry, hitting this 2.8 level, and that's another big day where we opened lower. It's kind of an engulfing. You normally expect to see that candle at the bottom of a run, but we started lower and then we've ended right at the top. So that's just showing the amount of bullishness in yields in Japanese bonds. And we were panicking back in January. This is probably the black swan event for the market, and ultimately a move above 3 will be very scary. We've got very big upside targets for Japan, and this will create a crisis. The most indebted country in the world, and with a 250% debt to GDP ratio, and the biggest foreign buyer of US Treasury yields, Treasuries. So that's going to have an impact on the market potentially. This is certainly the one to watch. So that Japanese yen chart, that's going to be the one to watch for intervention. Sterling, expect weakness on sterling with the political situation. And the interesting thing is we've got, again, we'll turn green if we go higher, stronger sterling. We'll go red if we go lower, weaker sterling. Looking at sterling against the euro, that is another case of a range. Which way will we break? That's going to be quite key. And look at the Aussie dollar, which is a rate I do watch quite a lot. We had dipped to a lower low. So the interesting thing is we're still below the cloud there. There's a sterling weakness against the Aussie, which has been particularly strong with interest rates already rising in Australia. Looking at Bitcoin, we have just hit a little bit of a top there, pulling back. On the 60-minute, we've got a new upside target not yet activated. That will turn green if we do activate. And the market's looking weaker again today. So we're seeing the futures off, the Nasdaq E-mini and the S&P future both down around anywhere between 1/4 and 1/3 of a percent. Does suggest that US stocks will open lower, and if we look at the UK, we are higher just, and the DAX in Germany, we are seeing a relief rally there, but the reality is we are in a very long sideways range here as well, so we've just got to really wait for the break. Asian markets, Japan was actually okay given what's happening with the currency and bonds. We saw a very big sell-off in Korea, the COPC yesterday. The Chinese Shanghai index is nudging new highs there, and the Sensex, which has been a real underperformer, continuing to look weak, even though it was up slightly. And the Aussie market, a classic case of wait and see, but the reality is we're seeing a lower high. A lower low would be very bad for the Aussie market. And again, these targets will change color depending on which way we break. Really interesting seeing some of the moves in soft commodities. Cocoa generated some upside targets, but still in a downtrend and hit the cloud resistance on the lagging line. This is the problem with recoveries. You often see failed recoveries, and even sugar, where we did see, and I gave a training course to a very big sugar trading operation in Australia in December. Here we see we've been in a clear downtrend, really clear on the weekly, upside trend, downside trend, and targets to $11 given at much higher levels, that one given above $20. We are in a long-term downtrend on the weekly. The daily has also been in a trend, and we've been below the cloud, but interestingly now we are going into a potential range, and consequently we've got an upside target and a downside target. It's a case of wait and see. The 60-minute chart might give us a little bit of a heads up. This is the trading in the range. Downside targets, 3 downside targets, not so many upside targets. A lower high, we make a lower low. Downside targets back to the bottom of the range on that daily chart. The really big one is coffee. That has broken lower, and that has broken a really big range. Going here on the weekly chart, we've been in an uptrend. We can now discount that target. We are now in a new downtrend for coffee, so that's really quite interesting. And on the short-term chart, we've got downside targets that were given as a clue that that level was going to break, so really quite key there. Looking at wheat, grains are looking stronger. We've got upside targets there on wheat. We've got upside targets on corn as well. So just breaking higher there on the daily chart, really quite key. Go to the 60 minutes if you want to get a heads up for what's happening shorter term. Gold, waiting to see if we activate this downside target on the daily. We look at the 60-minute, we have got downside targets looking quite worrying there. And if we look at silver, also looking weaker on that daily chart with downside targets. And platinum has got an upside target, but is below the cloud, so it is counter trend. And palladium, more downside than upside. Copper recently made a new high. It's looking much more bullish. And here we've got upside targets as well. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, you can see we have got a new downside target. So that was activated, but we're pulling back into the trading range now. The tech majors last night, we saw some pretty big falls. Tesla down 2.9%, pulling back, and we saw Nvidia giving up a lot of their gains as well. So that's struggling to make a top. The Nasdaq did give that weekly candle last week, the doji. Looking at the Dow, we did see some strong performances from stocks like 3M, but downside target met. McDonald's, interestingly there, big downside target. Travelers, this looks stronger with good upside targets. So it's really important that we look at the trend, even though it's tempting to focus on today's moves. Looking at the Nasdaq, Thomson Reuters, that's interesting. I'm running the data here on LSEG. Downside target, they were a strong performer, but that's in a downtrend. So really quite interesting when we see that. And then if we look at LSEG, the London Stock Exchange, top 100, we can just rank by percentage here. What have we got? We've got Airtel Africa, the top performer, but that chart is certainly nowhere near a strong chart there on the daily. We've got multiple targets there, but the key thing is that's really fallen out of bed recently and broken the cloud. A move below that key level will be very critical. 3i Group, downside target. So we are seeing a day of the worst performers actually being the best performers, the worst trends. BAE Systems obviously has been a strong performer lately with defense spending, but we are seeing a downside target. So that belays what you might expect with the news. So it's a really mixed picture. We're seeing basically markets really moving on this taco trade in the Middle East, and we just have to watch how we go. Keep an eye on the targets. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.